Greetings, millionaires and future millionaires. I'm Lane Bean, a 28-year retired lieutenant colonel and former F-16 pilot. Over the last 20 years, I side hustled one single-family house into a multi-million-dollar apartment portfolio with almost 700 units. My purpose today is to teach you what I learned to help you become a wise investor and a better millionaire. Today's topic is very important, and it's something that is often and easily misunderstood. And it's the concept of real estate syndications. Why would you ever want to syndicate? What is a syndication, and how do you get involved in it? Well, over the next couple minutes, I'd like to explain this a little bit to you and make sure you understand the principles behind a real estate syndication, the advantages, disadvantages, roles and responsibilities, so that when you're ready to invest in a multifamily project through a real estate syndication, you'll have some of the skeleton that you can read the PPM, private placement memorandum. In other words, the prospectus or the document that describes the syndication, and then you'll be able to understand it and move into that decision with confidence. So let's talk a little bit about a syndication and why you would want to do it. Well, a syndication is nothing more than a fancy word for a team. And if you've ever tried to buy a multifamily property or an apartment complex, you immediately know they're very expensive. In fact, they're more expensive than most people can afford by themselves. And so they pool their resources together to buy better properties, to buy more expensive properties, and to diversify the risk. So the reason you would want to buy or invest into a syndication is so you can buy a better property and a higher quality property. It also allows you're not buying the actual asset. Much like a stock in a company, you're buying shares of ownership in generally one entity. So that's what you're buying, shares of a certain project or certain real estate investment. That's what a syndication is. That's why you want to do it. What are the different roles in a syndication? Well, you generally have two roles. You'll have the team leader, the coach, which is generally the sponsor, and then you'll have the investors, which are generally limited partners. The actual entity can be set up in a variety of ways. It can be established as a corporation. It can be established as a limited liability company, or it can be established as a partnership, depending on the complexity, depending on the number of people, and depending on the expected duration. Most real estate syndications are set up as a limited liability company with a managing partner and then partners. Those things oftentimes are synonymous with the sponsor and the limited partners. So what I typically do is I will get 5, 10, 15 contributors or partners that do nothing other than have a limited role, and they bring in equity into the investment. That is anywhere from 95% of the required equity down to 80%. Just depends on how the formation of the partnership is set up. I, as the sponsor, am responsible for finding the right project, identifying it, acquiring it, raising money for it, establishing the exit strategy, publishing the business plan, going to the bankers, and then also ongoing investor relationships, reports, and tax forms. A variety of other things as well, but those encompass probably the majority of them. As a limited partner, an investor, I'm also potentially an investor, or you may be an investor, then you would just contribute your capital and be a part and own shares of the investment itself. So we would put all of that information together. We would identify a project, and then we would establish that syndication and publish that through a PPM, private placement memorandum, is generally where the outline of that business syndication exists. And you would get a chance to review that and review that prior to investing. So that's the roles and responsibilities of a syndication and the different positions that each individual would play. The structure, like I've already mentioned, can be a variety of things. It can be a limited liability, it can be a corporation, it can be a partnership, and most of the time the taxes are passed. The project or any type of property tax liability is passed through the entity to the investors themselves on a pro rata share of ownership. And you'll get that each year through a K-1 report. So that's how generally the taxes are advantaged. As far as the advantages and disadvantages of why you would want to invest in syndication, some of the disadvantages. Well, one, as a syndicator, your money is partnered with other investors, and so your risk is diversified. Also, it allows you, like I've already mentioned, to buy bigger and higher quality properties. And it also allows you, as an inexperienced investor, to partner with other experienced investors. And you don't have to have the experience to manage a project. Nor do you have any management responsibilities as a limited partner. You just contribute capital. What are some of the disadvantages of a syndication? Is you generally have voting rights, but you don't have any control over the day-to-day management or operation of the project itself. So those are some of the things that you can be advantaged by participating in a syndication. And lastly, how does a syndication get paid? Well, the sponsor, for doing all of the work, generally will get several compensation ways. Is for the upfront work, there's an acquisition fee that's often associated with that syndication. You'll find that normally in the private placement memorandum, what that percentage is of the total acquisition cost. I've seen it as low as 0.5% all the way up to 2%. And that's compensation for the identification, the negotiation, putting the partnership together, and other items as well. So acquisition fee is a method that the sponsor gets paid, and management fee to maintain the day-to-day management, either it be property management or asset management, and investor relationships is a percentage of the overall revenue. Again, anywhere from 0.05% all the way up to 2%. So that's the way that the fees are structured. And there's one other compensation for that, is as you read through the PPM, it's important to understand how the distributions will be divided too. Most of the distributions, and what I mean by distribution is either the monthly or the quarterly cash flow or the distributions from the sale of the property. How does that work? Well, there's several ways that it works. Let me explain two of them for you. Is one, the easiest way is just a simple percentage split. As a sponsor, I'll get 20%. As a limited partner, you'll get 80% of all distributions and all sales. A general equity split. The other way is through sponsor promote or sponsor incentives or performance hurdles. They all mean generally the same thing, and it's a waterfall compensation method to encourage the best possible performance. And what that will be generally is a preferred return where the limited partners get a guarantee of the first dollars distributed. a preferred return. Sometimes that's 5% all the way up to 10%. So the very first 7%, let's say 7% in this case, of distributions always go toward the limited partner. Once that's satisfied, above that preferred return, there may be a waterfall split, like 20%, 80%. 20% would go to the sponsors, 80% to the limited partners. And that's the first level of waterfall. There may be only one level of waterfall, or there may be additional waterfall levels. Another method I've heard is that some internal rate of return or some other type of financial metric, the sponsor promote or sponsor benefit could be an additional compensation. And so you just have to make sure you read through the private placement memorandum and make sure you ask questions about that, or make sure you fully understand it before you make your real estate investment decisions. But that's why you would get into a syndication. That's the roles and responsibilities of each part of the syndication. That's the advantages and disadvantages. And finally, the compensation. Most real estate private investors invest through real estate syndications primarily because the cost of these assets is so high that most individuals, most household individuals, can't afford to buy them yourselves. But real estate, as you have heard me say, and as you've heard me mention across this avenue and others, I think is the very best way. And this is a very advantageous way for you as an up-and-coming investor, or you as an interested multifamily investor, to participate and secure the benefits of multifamily investing. I'm bringing this to you today so that you can become a wiser investor. You can learn more about the parts and pieces that make up successful multifamily investing so that you can gain confidence. You can become a wiser investor, and you can become a better millionaire. I'm continuing our video education series with topics like this to help you learn more and gain confidence, because I feel like there's up and coming great opportunity ahead of us for multifamily investing. You can find other videos like this on our Facebook page, Pilot Legacy Private Equity Group. Please join me there. Increase your knowledge so that you can become a better millionaire. Thank you.